Well, what do we have here? Welcome to the breakdown, folks. Another fine production by the fine folks at Trick Shot, and this is going to be your home for everything BC Junior A Lacrosse League. Every single week there will be new content coming out recapping what we've seen in the past from some of the teams. There will be some occasional coverage following the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League as well as the Ontario Lacrosse League once we get closer and closer towards the postseason as well as the Minto Cup. But for now, at the very least, we're going to focus on BC. And for the first episode, we're going to focus mostly on what we saw from these teams last year. Before we move on from there, we will then look towards what these teams have been doing this year. So we're going to go down in order, of course, of the standings from last year, and that means the number one team, the defending Minto Cup champions, the defending BC champions, the Coquitlam Adanacs. They cruised their way through the regular season, of course, en route towards the Minto Cup. Them and the Poco Saints were the two teams representing from BC. They eventually find themselves in the final, taking on the Orangeville Northmen, and then the rest was history from there. It's a much different looking Coquitlam team this year than last year. But that being said, that doesn't mean that they're a team that should be counted out in any way whatsoever. Coquitlam has a culture that is full of winning. They have one of the best coaching staffs in the league in terms of Pat Coyle being the head coach. Ethan Ticehurst is back running the defensive gate. This year, however, Chris Gill is out. In comes Jalen Chaster to run the offensive gate. Another interesting wrinkle about this Coquitlam team, it's the last dance for arguably their most important player, and that is the man in between the pipes, number 35, Jack Kask. He was a fourth year last year when they finally break out and win the Minto Cup. This year, he's going to try to repeat with this team as the starting goaltender once again. And you know that a goaltender is the most important position when it comes to lacrosse, and that is a benefit of the Coquitlam Adanacs, is that they have had that position shored up for quite some time, and they will have that once again this season. Another thing to keep in mind with this Coquitlam team, aside from their captain, Ty Banks, who will return for this season, of course, he is also a senior on this team. They are going to have an entirely new leadership group come in, as all of their previous assistant captains, being David Charney, Jackson Fridge, Ramo Shinato, aged out at the end of last season. Those are some big defensive bodies in terms of Jackson Fridge and Ramo Shinato. Well, Jackson Fridge a little bit smaller than Ramo, but still a huge defensive presence, a huge transition presence, and those guys move on now to their WLA seasons. David Charney drafted to the Coquitlam Adanacs alongside Ramo Shinato. He was one of their protected picks. Jackson Fridge will be donning the color green this season in his first year in the WLA, being drafted by the Burnaby Lakers. Let's move on to our next team on the list, and of course the number 2 team in the standings was the Poco Saints. As already mentioned, the number 2 team that was representing BC at the Minto Cup. This is also going to be a very interesting year for the Poco Saints. They had a super successful year last year in the 2024 season, but they're going to have to get used to life without their captain and defensive leader in Braden Lady, who aged out last year. But they're also going to have to get used to life without Kalen Mander, who still has 1 year left of junior eligibility, but has moved on out east. He's now playing for the Toronto Beaches in the Ontario Lacrosse League. So a much different looking back end for the Poco Saints. They also have a much different looking offensive gate as well. Their left side is almost identical to what it's been at the very least last year, the last couple years as well. Andrew Cowan, Josh Mills, Lincoln Wall, who comes in in his second year of junior lacrosse. Think about their right side, though, and some of the guys that they lost after last year. Silas Richmond was a fifth year. He ages out at the end of last year. Austin Lamoureux, another guy that came over as part of that Silas Richmond trade, he also ages out, and some more of those righties as well. So it's a brand new looking right-handed offensive side for the Poco Saints. Parker Merlot gets into the mix. Tyler Learn gets into the mix a little bit more. Nolan Ross gets into it a little bit more. So the offensive side of the ball is going to be very interesting to watch for this Poco Saints team. If anything, the right side is going to be what you're going to want to keep your eye on in terms of just a completely different look. They do still have Ashton Brown in between the pipes. Should make a correction. He is a fourth year. He individually called me out when I called him a fifth year. He does still have another year of junior eligibility after this. But yeah, a different looking Poco on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be an interesting year to watch for them. Next one on the list is a very interesting team in the Nanaimo Timberman. This is a team that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on a ton, in that it feels like a lot of the past couple seasons have been building towards this year. They have 12 seniors on the team this year. They are going to be taking advantage of some of that knowledge, of some of that size that they have. And this is another team that also has not missed the playoffs since the 2018 season. But that being said, they also have not gotten out of the first round in any of those campaigns. This is a year that they, of course, want to take that step. It feels like they've been loading up for this. They also have one of the top goaltenders in the league, and he has been one of the top goaltenders in the BC Junior A League for quite some time in Keegan O'Kino. Over the last 2 seasons, he's averaged a save percentage of 832, and he is just steady Eddie for that team. He has been Mr. Consistent over the past bunch of years, and he will be a massive point. We already mentioned how important the goaltending position is in the game of lacrosse. Nanaimo is another team that has that position locked up. It starts from the back end and it goes forward, and the Nanaimo Timbermen are going to be a team to keep your eye on throughout this season. The Burnaby Lakers were the 4th and final team to make it into the BC postseason last year. They had a very successful year. They turned into such a must-watch rivalry whenever they played against the Coquitlam Adanacs. Of course, they ended up falling short in the playoffs when the Adanacs did take them down. This is going to be year 3 with Ty Yanko behind the bench as the head coach, and he is the definition of a player's coach. And I think you saw that a lot last year. He is a coach that can get a ton out of his players. He's a guy that players love to play for as well. This is also a team, though, that is now coming off of making the playoffs for the first time since 2009, a 15-year drought where this team did not make it into the playoffs. It would be devastating for them if they finally make it in and then have to take their foot off the gas or have a down year, whatever. This is a team that wants to continue to progress forward, and with Ty Yanko, you know that anything is really possible. Victoria, another interesting one on this list. Victoria is a team with a ton of history, and they're another team, much like Coquitlam, that has very much so a winning culture. Last year, they had very much so a down year, and anytime that Victoria has a year like they just did, which isn't too often, you know they're going to come out swinging. They're going to come and try to bounce back as quickly as possible. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, they've already started off this season 2-0 with a couple of wins to get things underway. They have also had a very successful Junior B program over the past several years, including representing BC at the Founders Cup the last 2 years in a row. How much does that play a factor into their Junior A team having a bounce back year? Do some of those Junior B guys get the call up and stick with this Junior A team and play a factor into some of that growing culture, into some of that winning culture that's going to be going through this next wave of Victoria players? They're another team that also has one of the top goaltending, not just individual goaltenders, goaltending tandems in the league. Talking about Angus Snow and Grayson Manning, 2 very similar style of goaltenders in that they're very reactionary. They make those big flashy saves, those very entertaining saves, but they're very successful at it. And I think both of those guys coming off of that year last year with Victoria, as they've grown up kind of watching this team have so much success at both the senior level, the junior level. They want to be a part of that success as well. And I don't think that down year sat very well with those 2 guys individually. I would expect both of them to have a strong bounce back year, and Angus Snow has gotten both starts in the 2 games to start off this Junior A season for the Victoria Shamrocks. The new Westminster Salmon Bellies, talk about a team with history. And this is a team that has been very much so in rebuild mode over the past few seasons, but they've been on a steady trajectory over these last few seasons, and they're happy with how this team is developing. They're another team that has a nice, young, up-and-coming goaltender in Boris Maximenko, who came into his first year as a junior goaltender last year, kind of stuck the landing really as the starting goaltender for the Junior A team. I think he caught some people off or by surprise outside of that organization, but he stepped in and he just ran with that position. I had somebody from within the organization tell me last year that they're a team that is anticipating contending for the Minto Cup the next time that it's able to be hosted in BC, which is in 2027. They're building towards that. They're another team that is young, up and coming, but they still have some work to do. And they're a team that has steadily increased their win total over the degree or over the span, I should say, of this rebuild. So they're happy with that. That's what I mean when I say that they're happy with the trajectory they're going in. It's just a matter of making that next step and trying to get the New West Junior program back in those winning ways. The Delta Islanders. This is a team, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, this is a team that I have a lot of questions about, only in the sense that I don't really know what their identity is yet. I'm very curious about them, and I have high hopes for them as well. They're a team that's kind of been in the middle to lower of the standings for quite some time, but they're another team that's also had a very successful run at the Junior B level. You know, they got close to playing in the league finals last year, falling at the hands of the Coquitlam Adanacs Junior B Tier 1 team. That's another team where, you know, how do they make that transition from the Junior B level to the Junior A level? They have another pretty good goaltending tandem themselves, in Jet Burns likely getting most of the games as their starter. Beggs is another goaltender in that system that will get some starts as well. He's more the senior. But the big thing with this team is Logan Schuss stepping behind the bench as the head coach. It's a little bit of a unique situation in that he was already part of the team in the role of general manager and has been for a couple of seasons now. At the end of last season, they decided they wanted to make a coaching change at the head coaching level. From what I understand, he did interview a few guys, but then decided at the end of the day, I think I'm the best option myself. So Logan Schuss, who is another player's coach, you know, he's a guy that people talk about at the pro level. He's almost everybody's favorite teammate in terms of guys that he's played for, or played with, I should say. Now he finds himself in the role of head coach, and that's another team that has a ton of knowledge and a ton of pro experience behind the bench when it comes to Curtis Hodgson as well as Jordan McBride. Like I said, that's a team that I'm just not entirely sure what their identity is yet, although they have started the year off 1-0, taking down that very senior Nanaimo Timberman team in their season opener. So the story is still waiting to be written about the Delta Islanders, and that's going to be another team that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on closely. Finally, we work our way down to the Langley Thunder. There's a lot to be said about this Langley team, and this is a team that has high expectations for themselves to a certain degree. Remember, this is a team that went winless last year. Not a single win throughout the regular season, and it's actually the first time in the BC Junior A League that a team has gone winless in over 20 years. Honestly, the BC Junior A website stops at 2005. That's the latest I could go back. So who knows? It could be significantly longer than that. It could have been 21 years for all I know. But at the very least, 20 years since a team has gone winless through the regular season. They're another team that has almost an entirely new coaching staff. Matt Beers is going to take the reins as the head coach. He's going to bring on his head coach at the National Lacrosse League level, and Kurt Malowski, to take the reins as the offensive coordinator. Jason Goller is back there as helping out on the D gate as well. Garrett Lewis is going to be out there as well, and he's actually the only returning coach from last year's staff. He remains on the bench. This is a team that people have been talking about in terms of their future for a long time. There's a minor program or a minor age group that's been coming through the rankings over the past handful of years that people have been talking about how this team just does not lose. That team, that group of kids, is now making their way into the junior rankings. Some of them finding themselves on the junior B team, some of them making their jump towards the junior A team. But this is a group of young men that haven't done a ton of losing for the most part, and will look to bring some of that culture into this Junior A program. They also do have Cody Malowski back. Of course, last year was the second straight year that Cody Malowski found himself traded at the deadline to the Coquitlam Adanacs from the Langley Thunder. He's back under his dad's helm, under the helm of Matt Beers. He's back with the Langley Thunder in his last dance of a junior career as well. You know, he is such a dynamic player. Everybody saw what he did at the Minto Cup last year with Coquitlam. He's going to try to bring some of that leadership, some of that knowledge that he's gained, built over his tenure with this Langley Thunder team and on his Minto Cup runs with Coquitlam to this young group. They also, I mean, we've talked so much about goaltenders throughout this league. It's an age of goaltenders right now in the BC Junior A League, which is just awesome. Everybody's heard the story from last year about Caleb Kahn and how he came in as a first-year junior. I believe he's a first-year junior. Got the call up to the WLA team. He was playing Senior A lacrosse as a young junior goaltender and was winning for that team. Just an unbelievable story. And, I got to see him personally live for the first time just a week ago at the junior A level. And my, oh my, despite the loss, he put on quite the show. He is going to be a steady goaltender for that Langley Thunder team for a very long time. He is going to make that team something to watch. They are also keeping a theme with them being, a young up-and-coming team. This past draft, the 2024 Junior A draft, they held 3 of the top 5 picks in the first round. They took first overall Parker Doyle, Cody Todd at second overall, and number 5, they took Jacob Glass. It all falls in that category of this team still having to learn, but certainly a bright future and a team to watch in the future. And remember, the Minto Cup will be hosted back in BC in 2027, just 2 years from now. Who knows what that story will unfold. That is the first episode of The Breakdown, brought to you by Trickshot. Again, you can find weekly episodes coming out. You'll find content everywhere, so keep your eyes tuned in on the Trickshot channels, Trickshot Live. That's where you're going to want to keep your eyes peeled for everything every week. We're going to be breaking down the Junior A rankings, and we will break down, of course, the Ontario Junior League as well as the Rocky Mountain League as we progress a little bit more throughout the season and towards playoffs. Ideally, at some point, I'm going to have a co-host. We'll see, so that everybody doesn't just have to listen to me talk over and over again. We'll see, but for now, that's going to do it. Thank you very much for joining us for the first episode of The Breakdown. Cheers to many more. Thanks, folks.